Hello, and thank you for choosing this clean historical Western romance by Emma Ashwood. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support allows us to keep sharing more wonderful stories for free. So grab a cozy spot, kick back, and let this story whisk you away to a different time and place. Enjoy. Copyright Emma Ashwood. Angel's Heart, The Brides of Mountain Falls, Book 1 by Emma Ashwood. Chapter 1. Boston, February 1893. Angel, if you get your nose out of that book long enough, you'll be happy to learn that Mitchell offered to pay for my ribbons at the store. Angel Jones looked up from her book, her expression vaguely focused. What was that? Honestly, you're no fun. No fun at all. All you do is read and read and read, and when you're not reading, you're writing. There is a whole world out there, and you'd rather be stuck in here with a book you've probably read 100 times. Grace, Angel's younger sister by 2 years, said with a pout. Dear sister, that's what you don't understand. I go on an adventure every day through my books. Tell me about Mitchell. Angel set her book aside and focused on her sister. Grace was simply breathtaking, with striking features and a perfect posture. At the age of 18, she was much more interested in courtship and flirtation than Angel had ever been. Although Angel was 2 years her senior, Angel had no such interests. She had seen too much of society where once a woman was married, she became an extension of her husband and was no longer her own person. Angel had no desire to be married at all. She wanted so much more from her life than simply providing company and comfort for a man. There's not much to tell, really. I was at the store buying some ribbons for my hair when he arrived. We talked for a little about this and that, and the ghastly dress Rowena Spade wore to the last dance, and then he offered to pay for my ribbons. Please tell me that means something. Anything. Grace all but begged. Angel couldn't help but laugh. Ever since her sister met Mitchell at a dance a few months ago, she had been infatuated with him. Mitchell came from a wealthy family and would be able to provide his future wife with all the comforts of the modern world. But Angel also knew that Mitchell was already engaged to be married to a girl from England. It means he was being kind. You know he's engaged. You shouldn't be too forward with him. It will only earn you a bad reputation, Angel warned. How would you know? You've hardly ever even spoken to a man unless it was about books, travel, or books about traveling, Grace snapped. Girls, don't be rude, their mother, Elizabeth Jones, said as she walked into the room. Do either of you know where Faith is? Faith was the youngest sister of the Jones family. Whereas Angel was infatuated with books and Grace with Mitchell, Faith was simply captivated by her love for music. Even before they could answer their mother, the melody from the piano traveled up the stairs. Ah, there she is, their mother said with a smile. She's hoping to play in church next Sunday. That would be lovely, Angel said with a smile. Mother, could you please talk to Angel? She's done nothing all day but sit here with that book. She didn't even want to go to the store with me, Grace complained. Angel's mother turned to her with a cocked brow. Angel, darling, you know how much I adore your love for reading, but you'll become a hermit if you continue this way. I'm not a hermit, Angel argued. I simply enjoy reading about other places, other people, and this book. She held up a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. It's magnificent. I hope that one day I can tell a story with such eloquence. You cried, twice, Grace reminded her. I didn't cry because I was sad, Angel explained. I cried because the characters are so real, you feel their angst and their concern. I'm concerned about you, Angel, her mother interjected as Faith began to play a hymn downstairs. Most of the girls your age are either engaged or married. I even heard that Martha Wakefield is with child. You need to start thinking of your future and not your next book, Elizabeth warned with a hand cocked on her hip. But I am, Mother. I want to travel the world. I want to see new places and meet new people. There is so much more to life than just Boston and a dance at the social club every few weeks, Angel said with a sigh. Travel? Where on earth would you travel to? It's preposterous. A woman doesn't journey on her own. It's dangerous and inappropriate. Perhaps your sister is right. These books are filling your mind with rubbish. No, they're not, Angel said firmly. I've learned so much about England, France, and even the Pacific Islands simply from reading. I'm not saying I'm leaving right away. I'm just saying that it is something I dream of doing in the future. What you should be dreaming of is finding a husband to care for you. A woman needs a protector. This world wasn't made for a woman to be alone. Although your father and I love you dearly, I'm sure you know that becoming a spinster and remaining in our care would cast quite a stain on our family. Your father didn't work all these years only to have his daughters ruin his reputation. Angel bit down hard on her tongue. Why couldn't she live the life she wanted? Why did she have to find a husband and get married? She dreamed of seeing the world, and most of all, she dreamed of becoming a teacher. It had been her secret dream for years, one she knew her parents wouldn't approve of at all. "Yes, mother," she finally said, knowing that any other answer would only upset her mother more. "I'll go to the next social dance with Grace if you insist." "I insist," her mother said with a smile. "Who knows, you might meet your own Mr. Darcy." Angel's eyes widened with surprise. "You've read it?" "Of course I've read it, but that doesn't mean I allowed it to keep me from finding my own happily ever after." Her mother winked at her before she left the room. Grace turned to Angel with a curious look. "Mr. Darcy?" Angel chuckled. "You'll have to read it to find out. Now let me continue reading. Go play with your ribbons," she teased. Grace stuck out her tongue in a playful way. "I'll do just that, and at the next dance, I'll be the prettiest girl there. Mitchell might even forget he's engaged to be married." "You're terrible," Angel said with a laugh before her sister left the room. She opened her book and continued where she had left off. She was swept away to an English manor house where flirtation and stubbornness met head to head. Chapter 2. How are my girls? John Jones asked after he finished saying grace at the dinner table. Angel looked forward to their family dinners every night. Her father was a banker and did very well for himself. That was why they could afford to live in a beautiful brownstone on the nice side of town. It was also the reason they enjoyed the services of a cook and 2 housemaids. Tonight, the cook had spoiled them with roasted duck and vegetables, and the aroma permeated the air, making Angel's mouth water. "I went for tea this afternoon with Mrs. Brown. She's very eager for a match between her eldest nephew and Faith," Elizabeth said warmly to her husband. Faith's eyes widened with horror. "But I'm only 16. "In time, dear, in time. Remember, it's important for your mother and me that you and your sisters find suitable husbands. If we are to keep our standing in society, the right matches are just as important as spending time with the right people," her father explained. Angel quietly sighed, her appetite gone. It had been like this for the last few weeks. At least twice a week, the subject of their future husbands would be brought up at the dinner table. As the eldest, there was an unspoken expectation that Angel be the first to wed. "Yes, father," Faith said, sounding resigned. Angel couldn't help but feel sorry for her sister. Faith was very shy and mostly kept to herself. The only time her face lit up was when she played the piano. "There is a very handsome tutor who came to the bank the other day, Angel. I might consider inviting him to dinner so that he can meet you. I bet the 2 of you will hit it off right off the bat," her father said with a knowing look. "Speaking of tutors," Angel began, trying to divert the conversation. "You know how much I'd like to work with young children. I've considered applying for a teaching position if one becomes available. Perhaps after I gain enough experience, I can become a private tutor." Her mother's face contorted as if Angel had just told them that she was marrying a coal miner. "Why on earth would you want to do that? It isn't appropriate for a young lady of your standing to seek out gainful employment. What would people say? They'd think your father can't provide for our family." "Mother, you know that isn't why I want to do it. I enjoy reading and writing, and I want to share that passion with young minds." "Is that so terrible?" Angel asked, confused as to why her mother would be so against her finding a teaching position. "Yes, it's horrible. A teacher or tutor is barely a few steps above a maid. Do you honestly think your father worked this hard all these years for his eldest daughter to become a maid? It's out of the question." Her mother snapped firmly before she reached for a drink of water. as if Angel had caused her throat to become parched by simply mentioning her own dreams. Unfortunately, I agree with your mother, Angel. It simply wouldn't be appropriate. Rather find a nice man to court you. Then when you have your own children, you can teach them. That would be a much better plan, her father said firmly. Angel frowned. So I have to find a husband and have children before I can even consider following my own dreams. Exactly. It's what's expected. Her mother nodded, setting down her water glass. Now enough of this nonsense. Grace, what were you up to today? Angel hated the way her mother had just dismissed her dreams. It had been something she had aspired to for years, but she never imagined her parents would be repulsed by it. She turned to Grace and pretended to pay attention to her story about Mitchell and the ribbons. Her father chuckled when Grace finished telling the story. You. Now that's a young man who could do a lot for our social standing. Isn't he engaged to be married? I heard his fiancée would be traveling to Boston from England in the summer, Elizabeth asked curiously. Grace smiled at her mother. There is time yet. Her parents laughed, clearly happy that their middle child was eager to find love. For a moment, she wished her parents would smile at her like that, but Angel pushed the thought away. She knew she wasn't a disappointment to her parents. Their only disappointment was that Angel enjoyed the company of books and children more than she enjoyed the company of men. The few times she had been courted, Angel found the men to lack enough intelligence and world wisdom to actually conduct a conversation. The men she had met could talk only about how much they earned and what they could afford. It might be because Angel was raised in an affluent household, but such things didn't appeal to her in the least. As the conversation turned to her father's day at work, Angel couldn't help but admire the way her mother looked at him. It was clear that even after all these years, her parents were still in love. Did she want that for herself? A smile curved Angel's mouth. Of course she did. But not right now. First, she wanted to live her life and travel the world. Chapter 3. March 1893. At her sister's insistence, on a cold morning in March, Angel agreed to go with her to town. The wind had a slight chill, and the streets were a little muddy, but Grace clearly looked forward to going shopping. Neither Angel nor Grace needed anything new, but Grace considered herself a fashionista and always wanted to stay up to date with the latest styles and hats from Europe. This morning, Grace was in search of a light cream hat to go with her new dress. By mid-morning, they had visited almost every hat shop Angel knew of in Boston, and Grace was yet to find a hat she wanted. Angel was exhausted and irritable and wanted nothing more than to go home and curl up in a window seat with a book, but she had promised Grace that she would come. There is one we haven't been to, Grace announced happily as she hooked her arm through Angel's elbow and all but dragged her towards another hat shop. Angel let out a quiet sigh. Please let this be the one where we find what you're looking for. Do you even know what you're looking for? No, Grace giggled, but I believe the moment I see it, I'll know. A hat is the most important part of any outfit. It rounds it off and gives it a certain panache. Angel knew better than to argue when it came to fashion, because Grace truly did know better than her. She followed her sister into the store and silently cringed when she saw all the hats. She knew that Grace would want to try on every single hat in the store before she began to search for the color that she had in mind. "Oh, look at this one!" Grace cried out with excitement as she rushed towards a royal blue hat. "You don't even have anything royal blue to wear it with," Angel protested. "My dearest sister, haven't I taught you anything? If you find an item that you really like, you just have to find a dress to go with it," Grace said, laughing as she tried on the hat. Angel shook her head as she began to browse the store. She really did hope this didn't mean that they would have to go dress shopping too. She saw a community board at the front of the store and walked towards it, willing to do anything at that moment but look at another hat. Reading the various notices on the board, she couldn't help but smile. A seamstress had posted a notice looking for extra work, and a nanny was seeking alternative employment. And then there were notices about positions at factories. But one notice in particular caught Angel's attention. teaching position available in Waterfall, Indiana. This charming small town that serves a community of ranchers is urgently seeking the services of a teacher for the younger students. No experience necessary. Must be able to read and write and to be firm but gentle with young students. Interested parties can send a telegram to the mayor of Waterfall. Angel read the advertisement and immediately felt her heart begin to race. That was exactly the type of teaching position she hoped to one day have. She glanced over her shoulder to see Grace trying on a scarlet hat and then turned her attention back to the notice board. She quickly memorized the details for submission of the telegram and then returned to Grace. Hope began to grow in her chest as she imagined herself being appointed. Angel knew the location of Indiana on a map and knew that it was an agricultural state known for its corn, wheat, and cattle industries. She had no idea about the small town of Waterfall, but that didn't dampen her excitement in the least. "What do you think of this one?" Grace asked, turning to her with a bright red hat atop her head. Angel couldn't help but laugh. Only Grace would be bold and brave enough to wear something as bright as that. "You won't be looked over, that's for sure. Do you think Father might disapprove?" Grace asked with doubt. Angel cocked a brow. "Do you mean the father who won't want his daughter to be noticed from a mile? Yes, I think he might disapprove just a little." "I know, but it's so pretty." "It is," Angel agreed. "Have you looked at the cream hats yet?" Grace took off the red hat with a heavy sigh and offered it back to the shop assistant. "I think it's time to look at your cream hats now." Angel laughed, shaking her head. "You mean to say you haven't even looked at them?" Grace simply shrugged. "I became distracted, wouldn't you?" Angel nodded indulgently. She had been distracted, only not by the hats, but by the notice on the community board. A notice that made her feel like this was something that she really needed to do. She knew her parents wouldn't approve. They wanted her to get married. But perhaps, just perhaps, she might be able to convince them to allow her to take a train westward. Indiana wasn't even that far, no more than a 4-hour train ride away. "This is it," Grace announced as she turned to Angel with a pretty cream hat on her head. The hat was very simple, with a small veil that hung just below Grace's eyes. "You're right, that's the one," Angel agreed with a smile, although secretly she was relieved that their shopping marathon was finally over. She couldn't wait to get home and decide what she was going to say in the telegram if her parents allowed her to apply. Chapter 4. Although Angel had been taking Latin lessons since she was young, she still attended a lesson once a week. Angel knew that she would probably never have the privilege of actually using her Latin skills, but she didn't mind. She enjoyed the lesson, the new words, and learning how many English words were rooted in Latin. The best part about her Latin lesson was that her best friend Mabel Cooper was there as well. They didn't see each other every day, only once a week after their Latin lesson. The two girls would enjoy tea and cakes on their way home and talk about what had happened the previous week. Mabel's parents were currently in England and, according to her suspicions, trying to find a duke to ask for Mabel's hand. Mabel wasn't completely against the idea of moving to England and marrying a duke, but she wasn't all that eager either. Mabel very much reminded Angel of Grace. She was full of life, witty, and eager to become a wife to a handsome and wealthy man. They differed in too many ways to count, and yet they simply loved each other's company. "Enough about my future duke and the manner he simply has to have. What have you been up to?" "Wait," Mabel laughed. "Let me guess. You read, you wrote, you read, and you read some more." Angel laughed. "I did read, you're right, but I also went hat shopping with Grace. It was exhausting, to say the least. I swear she tried on every single hat in Boston before she finally found one that looked almost exactly like the very first one she had tried on." "No two hats are the same," Mabel informed her pointedly. "Besides, Grace has a very good eye for fashion. Perhaps I should ask her to come along with me next time I go shopping for a new hat." "She'll love that," Angel agreed. "At the last hat shop, I saw a notice about a teacher needed in a small town in Indiana." Only Mabel knew how badly Angel wanted to become a teacher. Whereas her family tried to convince her otherwise, Mabel supported her dream. Really? Did you apply? Angel scoffed. How can I apply when I know my mother and father won't let me go? They've made it clear in no uncertain terms that it isn't appropriate for a member of the Jones family to take up work. And in their opinion, being a teacher or a tutor is akin to being a housemaid. Angel sighed heavily. I just wish they would be more open-minded. Mabel shook her head. I'm sorry to hear they're so unsupportive. I know you'll make a great teacher. Thank you, Angel said with resignation. She had already written the telegram in her mind about 100 times, but she knew that she would never have the opportunity to actually send it. What are you going to do? Sneak off? Mabel suggested with a teasing smile. Angel shook her head. I can't do that to them. Although I feel a little imprisoned by their expectations of me, I won't be able to just run off. You're a better person than I am, Mabel said firmly. If someone was standing between me and my dreams, let's just say they won't be standing for long. Sometimes Angel wished she could be as brave as Mabel, but she wasn't. She wanted to please her parents, but she was starting to wonder if it was going to be at the cost of her own happiness. Would they let you teach if you were married? Mabel asked curiously. Angel frowned. How do you mean? When I'm married, I'll have to care for my husband? They wouldn't be able to stop me, but what husband would want his wife to be employed? The right husband. I was just thinking about my cousin Nellie. Do you remember her? You met her a few years ago? Mabel asked with a questioning look. Yes, of course I remember her. She was a dear girl, Angel nodded. She still is. But Mabel glanced around to make sure they weren't being eavesdropped on. But she's now living out west. How? Do you have family there, or... Angel trailed off. Mabel's mouth curved into a wicked grin. She became a mail-order bride. Her parents matched her with a gee-awful fat man who was old enough to be her father. So instead of just running away and trying to make a life on her own, she found a man who wanted a wife, and they began to correspond. 2 days before the wedding, she took the train west and hasn't looked back. You mean she married a complete stranger? Angel asked, horrified. Not exactly, Mabel began. There is this newspaper. You can only find it at certain shops and stores. It's almost exclusive, one could say. With all the men out in the West and little to no women, one could understand it's hard for them to find wives. That's where the matrimonial Times comes in. Angel listened as Mabel explained how mail-order brides were now a common occurrence. By the time Angel had learned everything she could, she wondered if Mabel wasn't right. Perhaps becoming a mail-order bride was one way for her to follow her dreams and get her parents' approval. She could marry someone she didn't plan to love, someone who just wanted companionship, and then become a teacher. To Angel, it sounded like the perfect plan, even more perfect than Grace's new hat. Chapter 5. Waterfall, Indiana, March 1893. Travis Scott kicked back on his porch and took a long drink of the lemonade his mother had made that afternoon. It might not yet be summer, but after working cattle all day on the back of a horse in the early summer heat, he was quite simply exhausted. The aroma of meatloaf drifted out to the porch, making him grateful for his mother's cooking. Waterfall Ranch lay before him as far as the eye could see. Many men would muster pride or even arrogance by such a spread, but Travis had worked long enough to know that such a vast property was humbling. You were at nature's peril every second of every day. She could sneak up on you and trap you in a snowstorm even as quickly as she could dehydrate you if you forgot an extra canteen of water at home when you were lost in the fields. But he wouldn't exchange this lifestyle for any other. In fact, Travis knew nothing else. He'd been born on Waterfall 25 years ago. He'd learned the lay of the land and the art of working cattle at his father's side. Together, they had grown the herd, improved the breed, and worked the land to such an extent that they were almost completely self-sustaining. There had been nothing his father had been afraid of, nor a challenge he'd back away from. He was as healthy as an ox when God decided to call him home just 3 years ago. Travis could still remember the exact spot where it had happened. They had been moving cattle down from the hills when suddenly the sky had darkened. Thunderstorms were as much a part of life in Indiana as maize and corn. Travis had never feared one before, until the day a bolt of lightning had reached down and stopped his father's heart. It had been a cruel way to go, but luckily his father hadn't suffered. It had been quick. Ever since, Travis had been left to run the ranch on his own. He was responsible for all the cattle, 10 ranch hands, and his mother, who was nearing the age of 60. It was a busy life, one that didn't leave him a lot of free time to travel to the nearest town in the hopes of finding a sweetheart. But Travis dreamed of finding love and companionship. He dreamed of sitting on the porch and watching the sunset, with children laughing as they played outside. He wanted someone to confide in, someone to cherish, someone to build a future with. This wasn't a dream he had shared with his mother. Although he knew she wanted that for him as well, she had become very protective over and selfish of him. Even when Brandy, his right-hand ranch hand and best friend, came up to the cabin for supper, his mother would toe the line of being downright rude. With age also came quirks. His mother had become more stubborn than ever before. She'd try to do things that she was no longer capable of and hurt herself in the process. More often than not, Travis would stay up late at night to take care of the chores around the house that he didn't want her to attempt. Something as simple as washing the floors had led to her slipping and falling. She hadn't broken a bone, but she'd been hurt enough to stay in bed for a week. "Hey, boss, what you thinking about?" Brandy asked, jogging up the stairs. Brandy was a pretty woman in a tough kind of way. She could wrestle a bull, ride a Mustang, and drink beer with the best of them. But to Travis, she was a most reliable ranch hand and his best friend. He'd seen the way most of the ranch hands looked at her, but Travis had never thought of her as anything more than a friend. "Dreaming about the future," Travis said, holding out his glass of lemonade. Brandy took a long sip and cocked a brow as she leaned her hip against the porch railing. "Seems to me you're moping." "I'm not," Travis said stubbornly. "Fine. Then tell me what you're moping about," Brandy demanded, crossing her arms. She would never dare to talk to him in this way in front of the other ranch hands, but when they were alone, they were equals. "I was just thinking about the future. Having a family, a son to leave this all to," Travis admitted in a roundabout way. Brandy laughed. "Travis Scott, if you think a son is going to fall from the sky, you've got another thing coming." "You've got to find a woman first," Brandy teased. Travis shrugged. "That's the problem. Waterfall barely has any women at all, and the ones who are available don't interest me. And it's not like I have the time to go and spend in town, hoping to find someone who wouldn't mind living in the middle of nowhere. Then there's Ma. She won't approve of just any woman moving into her home." Brandy nodded. "The biggest problem there is the last one. As for finding a woman, I've got another suggestion for you. Do you think you're the only man in the West that can't find a wife? Think again." "What do you mean?" Travis asked, leaning forward, intrigued by Brandy's words. "Why do women have to know everything? It's called the matrimonial times. Men across the country seeking companionship, love, or simply a wife advertise in it. Then, if a woman finds said man interesting, they write," Brandy explained. "And then?" Travis asked, confused. "Then, after corresponding for a few months, you can decide whether or not you want to ask her for her hand. If you do, she comes out here and marries you," Brandy finished with a shrug. "And how would you know about this?" Travis asked curiously. Brandy smiled mischievously. "I might have my eye on a bachelor in the West somewhere. I just haven't found one I wanted to write to." "And if I decide to do this, how do I place my offer?" Brandy laughed. "Don't worry, boss. I'll take care of it." Brandy hopped off the porch and headed back to the small cabin in which she lived, adjacent to the ranch hand quarters. Travis wasn't sure if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the biggest mistake. Chapter 6. Boston, March 1893. Angel pretended to go to the library the next day, but instead she was on the hunt for more than just a book. She was on the hunt for the matrimonial times. After hearing about it from Mabel, Angel couldn't help but be hopeful that perhaps she could find a husband who would satisfy her parents so that she could pursue her dream of teaching. She had dreamt about going to Waterfall the night before to become a teacher. In her dream, the children loved her. The townsfolk adored her for the work she did. She felt happy and free. When she woke, Angel couldn't help but be disappointed that it had only been a dream. She stopped at every store she could think of, but no one had the matrimonial times. Desperate, she finally moved to the less savory part of town. She walked into a small shop that was owned by a woman with a strange accent. Not willing to waste more time scouring the shelves, Angel stepped up to the woman with a hopeful smile. "I'm hoping to find a copy of the Matrimonial Times." The woman smiled, revealing a few missing teeth. "You become mail-order bride, da?" Angel wasn't sure why the woman suddenly seemed so friendly. "I just want the paper. When a girl comes to buy a copy of Matrimonial Times, I never see them round here again." The woman reached behind the counter and handed Angel a newspaper. It looked like any other newspaper, but instead of headlines and news, it simply had the names of men. "Here, you take it. It got damaged. I can't sell it." Angel was grateful for the woman's kindness, but it didn't feel right to just take it. This part of town drew people who had fallen on hard times. She pulled a few coins out of her purse and handed them to the woman. "Thank you." The woman beamed with gratitude. "Thank you." Feeling a little out of her depth in this part of town, Angel quickly hurried back towards more familiar roads. She found a small diner that served coffee and took a seat. This was not something she wanted her sisters or her parents to find in her possession. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, but by the time her second coffee was cold, Angel was completely fascinated. There were men from all over the country, some widowed, others simply alone, and then there were those who quite frankly just wanted a trophy wife. From her experience in the social circles of Boston, Angel could quickly tell the difference. She found one man in particular in California who had been widowed. He was left with 2 young children and hoped to find them a new mother. He made it clear that he wasn't searching for an intimate relationship, but that he would be grateful for the company. It seemed like a very attractive opportunity for Angel. She could teach his children and perhaps spend more time attending to her own writing. She reached for the cup of cold coffee and was about to take a sip when her eyes fell on a word. Surprised and shocked, Angel only realized she had spilled when she felt the cold liquid seep onto her leg. She quickly dabbed the coffee spill with her hanky before she returned to the word that had caught her eye. "Handsome rancher seeking wife, Waterfall, Indiana." Angel frowned. It couldn't be. It was the exact same town advertising the teaching position. She drew in a deep breath, hoping to calm her racing heart as she started to read the rest of his advertisement. Travis Scott is a second-generation cattle rancher on Mountain Falls Ranch. With a large herd of cattle, he has no time to search for a lifetime companion. He is looking for someone kind, young, loving, and gentle with whom to share his life. Travis is a hard-working man with a passion for his land. He is known to be generous and fair, and cares for his mother regardless of his busy routine. If you feel the capacity to be a rancher's wife and support him through the seasons of life, then Travis is eager to hear from you. Angel read the advertisement again and wondered if she could indeed become a rancher's wife. Surely Travis Scott didn't expect her to marry him straight away. Mabel said that in some instances couples corresponded with each other for months before a proposal was made. She glanced up at the clock and realized she had already been away too long. If she was going to write to Travis Scott, she would have to do it now. Angel drew in a deep breath and walked over to the manager of the diner. "Do you perhaps have a sheet of writing paper and a pen I could use to pen a letter? You can add it to my bill." The manager looked confused for a moment before he provided her with a sheet of paper, an envelope, and a pen. "Here you go, ma'am." "Thank you." Angel returned to her table and read Travis's advertisement again. She had never truly believed in fate, but could it be fate that had called her attention to his advertisement? Could it be fate that she had seen the advertisement for the teaching position first and then came upon Travis's advertisement? She closed her eyes and said a quick prayer. "Dear Lord, if this is what you have planned for my future, then let my words speak to his heart." Angel's hand hovered over the page for a few seconds before she began to write. Chapter 7. April 1893. Over the next 2 weeks, Angel kept a close eye on all the mail that arrived. She had all but begged the housekeeper to make sure that any mail that came for her was put directly in her hand and not left around the house. She was beginning to wonder if her letter had reached Travis Scott at all. She wasn't sure how long it took for letters to find their way to Indiana, but surely he would have received them by now. Angel was so distracted as she anxiously awaited a letter from Travis that she hardly read at all. Instead, she had taken to her old hobby of sewing. She also visited Mabel more often, hoping it would help to pass the time. With every day that passed, she found herself wondering if the teaching position had been filled. She found herself doubting if she had said the right things and if Travis would even want to correspond with her. It was late afternoon on a Thursday when the housekeeper stepped into her room. "Angel, this just came for you. It's postmarked from Indiana?" Angel's heart skipped a beat. "Thank you." She quickly took the letter from the housekeeper before shutting her door and locking it. She knew she might appear rude, but she couldn't chance anyone learning about what she was up to. She rushed over to her window seat and carefully opened the envelope. It felt both strange and exciting to know that a man she had never met had taken the time to write to her. After drawing in a steadying breath, she began to read his letter. "My dearest Angel, I hope you don't mind, but I have to say that your name is simply beautiful. When I first placed my advertisement in the Matrimonial Times, or rather when my best friend did so on my behalf, I wasn't sure anything would come of it. But when I received your letter, it gave me hope. Not only the hope of corresponding with you in the future, but hope that we might share a future together. Please don't think me too forward, but I was charmed by your honesty. It isn't often a woman writes to a man to tell him that she has no intention of falling in love. It also isn't often that a woman of your social standing seeks gainful employment. I both admire and respect that. Your family sounds wonderful and very protective, such as a family should be. The position at the school in Waterfall hasn't been filled, to my knowledge, but I can put in a good word for you if you would like to apply. You told me so much about your life in Boston and your dreams of becoming a teacher and a writer that I would like to share with you a little more about myself. As mentioned, my mother lives with me, or rather, I live with her. Depends on which way you want to look at it. Since my pa passed away, I've been taking care of her just as she has been taking care of me. She tends to the house and the cooking while I tend the ranch and the cattle. Living on a cattle ranch is often hard work, at times much harder than I'd like to admit. We have small twisters, dust storms, and thunderstorms, but we also have more space than you can imagine. If you sit on my porch, where I am sitting now, for as far as the eye can see, the land belongs to the Scott family. It's a humbling feeling to know that you're responsible for so much of God's creation. I understand that you're not looking to fall in love, and I'll be honest with you by saying I doubt one can fall in love through words. But I will say that I look forward to hearing from you again. You have such a talent for describing things, such as your home, that I was thoroughly enchanted by your words. I can understand why you want to become a writer one day. The town of Waterfall is about 2 miles from Mountain Falls Ranch. It's not too far to walk, but in the winter, the snow will be too thick for such a walk as that. Should you decide to one day come to Waterfall, I will drive you in the snowy weather. I might be an advocate for a woman following her own dreams, but when it comes to the wilds of Idaho, no woman should travel alone in bad weather, in my opinion. I have to warn you that during the summer months, I often work from dawn till dusk. Sometimes I might be away for a day or two when we're moving cattle, and once a year, I drive the cattle to an auction 50 miles away. I promise to tell you more about myself, but to be honest, I have a hard time talking about this subject. I guess one could say I work hard. I'm fair and I'm honest, sometimes brutally so. I am patient. I have to be with my mother living with me, and I hope one day to have children of my own. I will leave it there for the moment, but please do write again. Tell me more about yourself, and if you think you'll be able to manage life on a ranch. We don't have dress shops or stores like you might have in Boston, but we do have a general merchant who allows us to order through catalogs. Yours truly, Travis Scott. Angel wasn't even aware she was smiling by the time she had finished the letter. She had made it clear that she didn't plan on falling in love with Travis, and that becoming his bride would be a way for her to follow her dreams. But something about his letter made her doubt that decision. Perhaps Travis Scott could be more than just a way to follow her dreams. Chapter 8. Waterfall, Indiana, May 1893. Travis found himself smiling even before he read the first word of his latest letter from Angel. Over the last 2 months, he'd written more than in all the years before. He had never enjoyed writing, not even when he attended the small school in Waterfall. But when it came to Angel, he found the words pouring out of him as he wanted to tell her everything about his life. After their first letter exchange, Travis had been nervous that he wouldn't hear from her again. But she'd replied instantly, and he'd received a letter only a few days later. They had written to each other about their childhoods, their parents, and even some of the challenges they had faced. Through her letters, he had learned about her sisters and their different personalities and her love for reading. He'd also learned that she had gone ahead and applied for the position at the school in Waterfall. Travis had kept his word and went to have a word with William Thomas, the headmaster, who promised to notify Angel of his decision to appoint her in the vacant position. Travis didn't want to be overly optimistic, but he couldn't help but hope that once Angel learned she had been accepted as a teacher, she would have more reason to come out to Waterfall, giving them a chance to get to know each other in person. He sat back and began to read, feeling his smile curve a little more with every sentence. My dearest Travis, thank you, thank you, thank you. I just received word this morning via telegram that I have been offered the teaching position at the school in Waterfall. Thank you for helping me make my dream come true. I'm not sure what you said to Mr. Thomas, but he seemed delighted to have me on staff. Your last letter truly intrigued me. I never knew that there was so much one could learn about cattle from simply working with them. It sounds fascinating and also a little dangerous. I've read a little about cattle ranching since we last spoke, and I want you to know that if I come to Mountain Falls, I wouldn't mind helping with the smaller tasks. I should probably tell you that I do not know how to ride a horse. I've only ridden in horse-drawn carriages. I agree that it would be better for us to meet in person to further pursue our correspondence. Although I find myself eagerly awaiting your next letter, I'm also curious about the sound of your voice, the gait of your walk, and the color of your eyes. Please don't tell me. Hopefully one day I can learn for myself. I can understand why you haven't told your mother about us corresponding. I haven't told my parents either. This is a modern world we live in, and I doubt they would understand how you can find kinship through letters, which is exactly what I believe we've found. It heartens me to know that you attend service every Sunday at church. Being raised with religion, it is important for me to be able to listen to the Lord's word at least once a week. It reminds me of what the Lord expects of us and the character of person He wants us to be. I should probably tell you that I'm not very patient. I'm working on that every day. Brandy, I was surprised to learn that your head ranch hand is a woman. Is it wrong of me to be surprised? She must be tough as nails and mean as a rabid wolf to be able to do all the things you say she can do. I must warn you, I'm not a delicate flower, but I've never been asked to muck out a stall or to wrangle a bull. She sounds fascinating. I hope that one day I can meet her. I'll thank her for placing your advertisement. Otherwise, we never would have met. I have to end this letter now. It's almost dinner time, and I don't want Faith or Grace to find me writing to you. Yours truly, Angel. By the time he'd finished reading, Travis found himself chuckling. Although he had no idea about Angel's voice, he could imagine her being a rambler. She wrote down exactly what she was thinking, making her letters very entertaining. He read her letter again and found himself eager to meet her. Twice she'd mentioned coming to the town of Waterfall. Did that mean she wanted to meet him as well? Travis watched the sunset in the distance. painting the sky in beautiful hues of pinks and purple as he allowed himself to search his heart. Was he in love with Angel? Certainly not. But could he fall in love with her? Definitely. A smile curved the corners of his mouth as he began to write to her. He knew that he might be a little forward and that it might be too soon to ask. But if he didn't, he would regret it. Besides, she had a teaching position waiting for her in the fall. He wrote the letter with as much finesse as he could muster. Spending every day in the company of ranch hands, he wasn't even sure what the word meant. But by the time he was done, he hoped his letter was charming enough to elicit a telegram in response within a few days. He didn't seal the envelope just yet, knowing that if she said yes, it would only be appropriate for him to include her train fare. He'd add a postal order for that in the morning before he mailed, hopefully his last letter to Angel. Chapter 9. Boston, May 1893. Angel had never been this nervous before. Her hands were clammy, her cheeks flushed, and her heart was racing a mile a minute. She was trying her best to hide it from her family as they bowed their heads in prayer. Once her father was done, he smiled at his family with the usual question. "How was your day, ladies?" For a moment, a stab of doubt punctured the excitement that had been building within Angel since the day before. When she had received Travis's letter, she had been overcome with so many emotions, she wasn't even sure she could name them all. She had been excited, flattered, hopeful, afraid, nervous, and most of all, she had pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. As conversation picked up around the table, Angel found herself thinking of his letter once again. She had memorized every single word of it, simply because she had read it so many times. "My dearest Angel, I hope this doesn't come as a surprise to you, but I feel it is time for us to take our correspondence to the next level. With every letter I've received from you, I've grown more and more convinced that we could quite possibly be a perfect match. You entertain me in ways that I find endearing, and I'm tired of reading your words. By that, I mean that I'd like to hear you laugh and the cadence of your voice as you speak, and I'd love to see the way your face lights up when you talk about teaching. I've given this quite some thought. Hopefully one day I can take you to the place where I go to think, the place where I make all the important decisions in my life. I think you'll like it there. I would like to invite you to come to Mountain Falls. Would you honor me by giving me your hand in marriage?" Before you tear up the page and think I'm being too presumptuous, I'm not expecting us to get married moments after we meet for the first time. I'm hoping you'll accept my proposal and come to Mountain Falls as my fiancé. This will not only give you time to settle in before you start your position as a teacher in the fall, but it will give us time to get to know each other without having to wait for days for a written response. I'd like to show you my ranch, to let you experience the life you would have if you choose to move forward with the wedding. I know you said that you weren't planning on falling in love with me, but hopefully, given enough time, I might just convince you otherwise. Through your letters, I've developed feelings for you. They are hard to name at the moment, but they are there. I find myself thinking of you most of the time, and when I'm not thinking about you, I'm writing to you. Over and above this distracting my attention from my work on the ranch, I'd much rather spend time with you in person to learn if we might be a good match. It would be perfectly acceptable for you to live on the ranch with my mother as a chaperone protecting your reputation. I can't promise you wealth or luxury, but I can promise you that if you come to Mountain Falls, that I will always protect and cherish you. In my heart, I know that I will come to love you as well. Honor me with a yes, Angel. Come and meet me, because I simply can't wait to meet you. Affectionately yours, Travis. P.S. I've enclosed money for your train fare, a telegram, and any other expenses you might incur on your travels. I eagerly await a telegram to learn of your date of arrival. What are you smiling about? I just said that Mitchell is moving forward with his wedding. We received the invitation this morning. Grace's irritated tone of voice snapped Angel out of her dreamy smile. What? I'm sorry to hear that, but you knew he was engaged to be married, Angel reminded her. Still, it was heartbreaking to receive the invitation. Grace sighed heavily. What about you, Faith? How was your day? John asked his youngest daughter. Paying attention to the conversation, Angel took a bite of her roast potatoes. Routine mostly. I went for a walk in the park, practiced playing piano, and then I spent the afternoon visiting with a friend, Faith said easily. I can still remember a time when you asked that question, and I would tell you how Grace pulled Faith's hair, and Angel drew on the walls, all the while trying to get dinner on the table and trying to act like a good mother when you got home. Elizabeth laughed. We've come a long way, John. Just look how elegantly our daughters have grown up. You did a good job, John complimented his wife. Now that you mention elegance, I'll be wearing my new hat to the dance next week. Word is that there are some naval officers in town, Grace said with a wicked grin. Angel had to laugh. A moment ago, her sister was devastated about Mitchell's engagement, and now she was already planning on finding a new beau to fawn over. What are you laughing at? At least the men I like are real and not stuck between the pages of some Bronte novel, Grace said teasingly. Angel felt her heart skip a beat. She had put it off until now. But she knew she couldn't procrastinate forever, not if she wanted to arrive in Indiana before the week was over. Actually, I found a real man, one that isn't between the pages of a book, Angel said calmly. He proposed to me and I accepted. Faith's fork clattered onto her plate even as Grace's eyes bulged out of her head. Her parents shared a look of confusion with widened eyes. Then they all turned to Angel with shocked expressions. Chapter 10. Angel had known this would be their reaction. She also knew that the hardest part wasn't done yet. Right now, her family was only shocked to learn she was engaged. She had yet to tell them to whom and where he lived. Her mother began to chuckle. Angel, you whimsical girl, you had us all believing you for a moment. Her father began to laugh. I think I just aged 5 years. You shouldn't tease your parents like that. Faith frowned at Angel, and a small smile curved her mouth. I don't think Angel was teasing, were you, Angel? Angel shook her head. Not at all. Silence fell over the table for a moment, before her mother shook her head and turned to her with a confused expression. Engaged? To whom? You haven't even been courted. You hardly ever attend a dance? Do we know him? Is he from Boston? What's his last name? What business is his family in? Her father added. Why didn't we know about him until just now? Grace asked. Angel glanced around the table and cocked a brow. Now, which of those questions would you like me to answer first? Or would you rather I just start at the beginning? Her father trailed off, speechless. Start at the beginning, dear. Her mother, who hardly ever touched alcohol, reached for her burgundy and took a sip before she turned to Angel with an expectant look. His name is Travis Scott. He lives in Indiana in a town called Waterfall. We've been writing to each other for the last few months, and he's asked for my hand in marriage, Angel began to explain. So you haven't even met him? Grace asked, disgusted. I don't need to meet him to know that I like him. In our letters to each other, we've told each other everything. I know how he grew up. I know that he goes to church on Sundays. I know that he adores and respects his mother, although she is a little stubborn, and I know that I like him very much. That isn't love, her mother stated quietly. I know, Angel agreed. He's asked for my hand in marriage in order for me to go and visit him in Waterfall. I'll be staying on the ranch with him and his mother, who will act as a chaperone. After an agreeable amount of time, we will decide whether we are both willing to proceed with a wedding or to break off the engagement. It sounds reasonable. Her father surprised himself with the realization. You've given this a lot of thought? I have, Angel agreed. How did you come to write to a man in Indiana? Grace asked confused. Angel couldn't tell her parents about the matrimonial times, so she told a white lie. He's a friend of Mabel's family. She told him about me, and he asked to write to me. Oh, Grace said with a nod. How far away is Waterfall? Her mother asked. It's about 4 hours by train, so it's close enough that you can come and visit if I decide to stay, and I can always come and visit you as well. Although with the ranch, it might be hard for Travis to get away for any length of time. You really have given this a lot of thought, her mother said with a heavy sigh. I suppose your father would have appreciated being asked for his blessing, but in these times, I guess that isn't done anymore. I know you might find this strange. I also know that you might think that I've lost my marbles somewhere in a book and I'm making a mistake. But I'm not. I'm 20 years old. I know my own mind and my own heart. I've prayed on this matter and I've thought about it for a while. I know I'm doing the right thing. Do I have your blessing to leave on the train day after tomorrow? So soon? Her father asked, surprised. Angel couldn't stop the light blush from creeping into her cheeks. We're eager to meet each other. Now that we're engaged, I'm sure you'll understand. I'll need to run arrangements or your train fare, and you're going to need a steam trunk for your things. Her father began to list everything she would need for the journey and life on a ranch. Angel held up her hand. Father, Travis has sent me money for the train fare and any other expenses I might have. Once I have your blessing, I'll send him a telegram in the morning notifying him of my time of arrival. There is enough for a steam trunk and perhaps even a lightweight dress or two to wear on the ranch. A wedding dress. You don't have one of those, Grace cried out. That was very generous of him. Her father nodded approvingly. He turned to her mother with a questioning look. What you do think? Do we give her our blessing to marry a man we've never met in a town we've never been to? Angel could have hugged her mother when she began to laugh. Weren't you the one that always told me that love had no reason and no rhyme? Sure seems to me that Travis at least has some rhyme to his reason if he chose our daughter. Thank you, Mother. Angel couldn't believe her mother approved. Then I guess all that is left to say is, we love you, and this will always be your home if things with this Scott fellow don't work out. What does he raise on his ranch? Her father asked, rubbing his chin. Beef. Her father shook his head with a chuckle. A rancher's wife. Can you believe that? I'm just grateful his mother lives with him. Otherwise, your father and I might not have given him our blessing. You'll write? Often? As often as I possibly can, Angel promised. Feeling relieved about telling her parents, she couldn't help but feel a little guilty as well. She didn't tell them about the teaching position or that she didn't plan on falling in love with Travis. Some things were better kept to herself. Chapter 11. Waterfall, Indiana, to 15th May, 1893. Although the train journey had been long, it was with great excitement that Angel disembarked from the train on the platform in Waterfall. The town was small and dusty, and the buildings looked weathered and beaten by the elements. But Angel didn't care. Arriving in Waterfall was the first step to living her dream. She was a little nervous about meeting Travis Scott for the first time, but just the thought of having the opportunity to teach eased her nerves a little more. She thanked the conductor after he deposited her steam trunk beside her and watched as the train began to slowly pull away from the platform. For the first time since she left Boston, Angel doubted whether or not she had made a mistake. What if Travis was a brute and a drunk? What if all the letters he'd written her were only a way to woo her into coming here and to treat her as a servant? What if he beat her? What if he didn't like her? What if he sent her back on the next train to Boston? Fear crawled up her spine even as her throat went dry with the reality of what she had done. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Angel Jones?" A deep voice rumbled behind her. Angel turned and looked into the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. They were steel blue, and although she didn't doubt they could be cold, they seemed kind. His hair was sandy brown and windblown. His brows were thick as they hooded his striking eyes above a strong, square jaw. He was the most attractive man Angel had ever laid eyes on. With broad shoulders, hat in hand, and a curious smile, he spoke again. "Are you Angel Jones?" Angel blinked and forced herself into the moment. "That's me." He held out a wildflower and smiled at her with affection. "It's me, Angel, Travis Scott." He reached for her hand and pressed a kiss to the top as a real gentleman would. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." When he released her hand, she was holding the flower, feeling thoroughly charmed. She hadn't known what she had expected of Travis's appearance, but she hadn't expected him to be so handsome. "The pleasure is all mine," she replied with a quiet voice. "I never asked part, but I have to say you're easy on the eyes. You're real pretty, just like an angel should be," Travis said with a charming grin. Angel felt her cheeks heat with a blush. Thank you. Here, let me get your bags and then we can head out to Mountain Falls. Travis picked up her steam trunk as if it weighed nothing, although Angel knew it was too heavy for her to even move by herself. She followed him to the wagon standing at the end of the platform and couldn't help but feel a little trepidatious about riding off with a stranger. As if sensing her trepidation, Travis turned to her once he had loaded the steam trunk onto the back of the wagon. If at any moment you feel threatened, the sheriff is right over there. A nervous laugh escaped Angel. Is it that obvious? Travis chuckled. Just a little. He helped her into the wagon before he climbed in himself. I'm sure it's natural. It's a brave thing you did to come out here without even meeting me first. I don't feel very brave right now, Angel admitted. Well, you are, Travis insisted. How was your train journey? For the short duration of the ride to the ranch, they spoke about her train journey, the weather, and the landmarks around them. Without even realizing it, Travis had set her completely at ease by the time they arrived at Mountain Falls. The cabin, as he had called it, was actually a beautiful large two-story house. Angel couldn't help but be fascinated by the large logs that had been used to build it. It was amazing that it had been done out here in the middle of nothing. A large barn stood to the one side, coated in linseed oil that had turned the wood red with time. Travis, your property, it's beautiful. Travis stopped the wagon in front of the house. I'm glad you approve. Was afraid you'd be expecting a brownstone. Angel laughed, shaking her head. A brownstone, really? I might be from the city, but I realize out here cabins are built out of logs mostly. And mothers can be a little difficult, just as in the city. Travis warned with a smile. Angel appreciated the warning, but she was sure that his mother would be a sweetheart. Older women were, at least to her. The moment they stepped into the cabin, a woman walked toward them. Her hair was gray and her smile terse as she looked Angel up and down. She'll do. Angel felt a little offended by the comment, but summoned a smile. I'm Angel Jones. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Jones. Yes, Travis. Show her to her room. I've put new linens in there, so you can just make the bed, Mrs. Jones said, a little dismissively. Angel heard Travis sigh quietly beside her. This was probably what he meant with difficult mothers. She followed him up the stairs, admiring the craftsmanship that went into the railing and the detail of the roof shingles. When they reached the first floor, there was a long, broad hallway with numerous doors on either side. My pa had hoped for a big family. Unfortunately, they only had me, Travis explained as he moved to the second door on the left. This room is yours. Angel had been raised in comfort and wouldn't have minded anything less. But it was clear that although they lived in the West, Travis and his mother had most of the home comforts you could expect in the city. The stovepipe from the wood stove in the kitchen traveled it through her room towards the roof, assuring her the room would be warm in winter. Large windows allowed the light to stream in. Apart from the bureau, there was a large closet and washing basin in the corner. She even had a desk. For a moment, her heart fluttered, realizing that the man she had been writing to for so many hours was now standing beside her. She glanced at him and reminded herself that she wasn't here to fall in love. She was simply here to teach. But when Travis turned to her with a smile, Angel wondered if it was going to be that easy. I'll meet you downstairs in a while for dinner. Give you time to rest and settle in. Thank you, Angel said before he left the room. She turned in a circle, her arms flung wide. She felt excited about her new adventure. I don't know where you found her, but she seems a step or two above your usual housemaid, Jessica said, as soon as Travis joined her in the living room. His eyes nearly bugged out of his head at his mother's comment. He had simply explained to his mother that Angel Jones from Boston was coming to stay with them. Since he had known his mother would object to him finding a mail-order bride, he hadn't been forthcoming about his relationship with Angel. Now he regretted it instantly. Jessica Scott had always been a force to be reckoned with. Living in the West and raising a child amongst the wolves, bears, and Indians, she had to be. Travis had always admired her for her bravery and her determination. But after his father passed, those qualities had turned into something much fiercer: protectiveness. His mother had become like a bear protecting her cub. Losing her husband had her focus turned to Travis, every minute of her every day consumed with his safety and his happiness. It wasn't that Travis didn't think his mother wanted him to have a wife or a family. It was merely a matter of knowing that his mother would feel no one was good enough for her only child. He had thought that once his mother met Angel and was charmed by her, she would be more acceptable to the news of her becoming her future daughter-in-law. Now Travis doubted that would ever happen at all, especially if she had come to the conclusion that Angel was their new live-in housemaid. He shook his head with a sigh, wishing he had been clear about his relationship with Angel. For a moment, he considered telling his mother the truth, explaining to her that in actual fact, Angel was his fiancée, but he realized doing that now would cause an argument, one he didn't want Angel to overhear. An argument that could cause Angel to take the next train out of Waterfall back to Boston. He thought of their letters and her excitement about taking up a teaching position in the fall, and knew he couldn't allow his mother to ruin this new opportunity for Angel. He wouldn't tell her now, but he would tread carefully and keep a close eye on his mother until she was ready to learn the truth about Angel's arrival. "Ma, I know there is a lot you need be done around the cabin, but just let her settle in first," Travis asked, trying to circumvent his mother from working out a schedule or putting Angel to work right away. "Fine, but just a few days. Room and board aren't free, and neither are our good graces. I don't know why you invited her to come here, but I do know she won't be sitting around idle and watching me do all the housework," Jessica said firmly. Travis nodded, hoping that Angel wouldn't mind helping out around the house. "I have to check on the calves. Would you mind starting with dinner?" Travis asked, with the hopes of distracting his mother until he could come back to shield Angel from his mother's mindset. "I don't mind. That's why I've cooked your meals all your life," Jessica snapped. Travis put his hat on his head and headed outside. He checked on the calves, made sure the chickens had been fed, and that Brandy had moved the pregnant cows to a closer paddock before he headed back inside. Just as he stepped into the kitchen, Angel joined him and his mother. "That smells delicious. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Yes, you can start peeling them carrots," his mother said with a nod toward a bunch off the freshly picked vegetables. By the expression on Angel's face, Travis quickly realized she wasn't that at ease in the kitchen. She'd mentioned they had house staff. He just didn't realize they had a cook as well. "Here, I'll help," Travis offered. He collected 2 paring knives before he carefully demonstrated to Angel how to peel the carrots. She seemed entertained by the chore rather than dreading it. Travis's heart warmed knowing he'd made the right decision by asking her to come to Mountain Falls. His mother might not be aware of his plans, but Travis couldn't help but be excited. Angel had come across in their letters as positive and joyful, and he could see now that she embraced that very attitude when it came to new challenges, something that would take her very far in the West. Chapter 13. A week after her arrival in Waterfall, Angel fixed herself a cup of tea and went to sit outside on the porch. She had learned so much over the last few days that she could only hope to remember. Jessica had taught her how to care for wood floors, how to deal with wayward snakes, and most of all, how to cook Travis's favorite meals. Today she had done the laundry, all the clothes including the bedding. Her arms were aching and her back was sore, but she had a stupid grin on her face as the sun began its descent in the west. For her whole life, everything, or at least most of the things, had been done for her. There had been times when she had felt frustrated with boredom, but here on Mountain Falls, she could see the difference her effort made every day. She took pride in the windows being free from dust and rain streaks. She enjoyed the scent of the lemon balm she had rubbed into the wood floors and stairs to protect them. The house smelled like freshly washed laundry, and the stew she was cooking was happily bubbling on the wood stove. It felt good to make a difference, to feel as though she was needed, although she couldn't help but feel an Arctic breeze coming from her future mother-in-law. It was clear that either Jessica didn't want her here or didn't approve of her. She hardly spoke to Angel at all, and when she did, it was either to issue instructions or to remind her of something she hadn't done yet. Angel didn't mind the work, but she would appreciate a little conversation from Jessica rather than the wide chasm of ice that seemed to lay between them. She sipped on her tea as Travis approached the porch. At the sight of her, his mouth curved into a smile. Angel's heart skipped a beat as she felt a smile curve her mouth as well. "That looks like a good way to end the day," Travis said, taking off his hat. Angel nodded. "It is. The view here, it's truly beautiful this time of day." Travis nodded. "Sure is from where I'm standing." It was the first time in a week that Travis had flirted or complimented her. She felt a flush rise into her cheeks and quickly looked away. Although she felt as if she knew everything about Travis, she couldn't help but feel a little shy around him. "Did you get everything done on the ranch today?" Angel asked, trying to divert the attention from her. Travis chuckled. "First thing you need to learn about a ranch is that the work is never done." He smiled at her as he took a seat beside her. "The second thing is, you never ask, because if you manage to get everything done that you planned on doing, chances are something's going to come up that will have you out in the muck and elements for the rest of the night." Angel laughed. "I didn't think you were superstitious." "I'm not. I've just been a rancher long enough to know you don't tempt fate," Travis returned with an easy smile. He glanced over his shoulder before he turned back to Angel with an apology in his gaze. "Listen, I'm sorry about Ma. She can be a bit of a slave driver when she wants to. If you feel like not wanting to do something, you just tell me and I'll talk to her." Angel shook her head. "I enjoy helping out. I've learned so much in the last week. Besides, I don't like doing nothing." "Fair enough. She hasn't had any help around the house before. She used to be able to keep up with all the chores, but she can't anymore. She refuses to believe she's growing older, but she is." Travis shrugged. "I guess it's hard to accept you can't do the things you had no trouble doing before." "We're all going to get there someday, God willing. But as I said, I really don't mind helping out." Angel assured them. They sat in companionable silence for a while before she turned to Travis. "I didn't expect to like it so much out here in the middle of nowhere. I'm used to shops, diners, coffee houses, and everything being within walking distance. But this type of life, the solitude brings a different type of satisfaction, almost peace. Wait until you harvest the first vegetables from a garden you've grown, or the first time you see a calf stand up for the first time. It's hard work, but the rewards, I see it as a blessing to be able to live on a homestead." "I can see that you love it very much," Angel observed with a smile. "Have you started to prepare your lesson plans?" Travis asked. Angel shook her head. "I haven't really had time yet, but I will. I still want to see Mr. Thomas to find out the subjects he'd like to handle. I know at that young age it's hard to keep the attention of children, but I'm hoping they'll learn from me. I've read that teaching with games makes it a lot more fun and helps the children memorize, like the alphabet song." "The alphabet song?" Angel chuckled. "The alphabet song? You don't know it?" "Nope, never sung the alphabet in my entire life," Travis laughed. Angel began to sing, feeling a little embarrassed to be holding Travis's attention as she was. When she was done, he clapped his hands and laughed. "I know I'll never forget that song or the alphabet after that. Let's hope my students feel the same way." Angel stood up and turned towards the door. "I've got to check on the stew." "Angel," Travis said before she could open the screen door. "Yes? I'm glad you're here. It's much more fun than just waiting for your letters to arrive." Angel felt a smile curve her mouth. "I agree. It's much better." Chapter 14, 31st May 1893. Travis had known that he and Angel had a connection through their letters, but he hadn't realized how much that connection would strengthen so soon after her arrival. In the couple of weeks that she'd been on Mountain Falls, he'd seen her work without complaint, laugh without reservations, and endure his mother's orders as if they were acceptable, which they definitely weren't. He knew it was past time to tell his mother about his relationship with Angel, especially since he could see them going ahead with the wedding, but something held him back. It wasn't that he doubted a future with Angel. It was merely that he doubted whether or not his mother would understand. His parents had had a wonderful relationship up until his father passed away. Travis knew that his mother wanted that for him. But what she didn't realize was that it wasn't up to her to choose with whom he was going to spend the rest of his life. It was up to him. He rounded the corner of the house and felt his heart swell at the sight of Angel on her hands and knees in the vegetable garden. He knew, with certainty, that this was the woman he wanted to build a life with. She'd made it clear in her letters that she didn't want to fall in love, but Travis hoped that in time her feelings would change. His feelings had already changed more than he could have imagined. He no longer just liked her or enjoyed her company. He was falling in love with her. It was a feeling that made him feel more powerful than standing on top of the hill overlooking his herd, more powerful than wrestling with a bull or riding a stallion. Angel looked up and smiled at him, and Travis knew the only thing he could compare that feeling with was love. "I thought you were out riding cattle?" Angel asked, wiping the sweat from her brow. A smear of dirt touched her nose. Travis leaned closer and used his handkerchief to wipe away the dirt. "There you go." "I must look a right mess," Angel laughed. "I never knew how much I'd enjoy gardening. It's quite satisfying, actually." Travis nodded. "Especially when you start harvesting your own vegetables. You do know the difference between vegetables and weeds?" he asked teasingly, although he really hoped she did. Otherwise, she would be weeding out all their new seedlings. Angel stuck out her tongue in a cute way. "Of course I do. Your mother had me bring in the first weeds for her to inspect." Travis cringed. "I'm sorry. I know she can be very overbearing at times. I haven't—" Before Travis could come clean and tell Angel that he hadn't been honest with his mother, she shook her head and held up her hand. "You don't have to apologize on her behalf. I understand. This home has meant everything to her, and now another woman has arrived and is interfering in her eyes. I won't ever do things the way she did, but I can at least try to honor what she has achieved here." Angel's words made Travis's heart expand even more. "You're something, you know that?" Angel smiled. Right now, a grimy something. It was the first time she spoke in the Western twang Travis had spoken with all his life. A chuckle escaped him. "I better get back to work." He walked away from Angel, missing her already. After jogging up the porch to grab something to eat before he headed out to the fields again, he stepped into the cabin. His mother stood there with her arms crossed and her brow cocked. "Travis Scott, your pa would be turning ye in his grave if he saw you just now," Jessica said in a snippy tone of voice. "What?" Travis asked, confused. He had no idea what his mother thought he did, but it was clear she disapproved. "Fenagling with the help like that?" Prosody rate percent. "We raised you to find a good wife, Travis, one that will be able to stand by your side and give you strong children. We didn't raise you to banter with a servant. That girl should know her place on this farm. You laughing with her and teasing her will give her the wrong idea. I won't have that. Not in this house." Jessica was out of breath after her tirade. Travis glanced over his shoulder to make sure Angel hadn't heard his mother. "Calm down, Ma. You're flushed." "You're going to give yourself a headache," Travis cautioned her. "I'd rather have a stroke than see you marrying the help." Jessica cried out with anger before she stomped upstairs to her bedroom. Travis shook his head and let out a heavy sigh. Now would have been the perfect time to tell his mother about his relationship with Angel, but she was already so worked up and upset that he feared for her health. He began towards the stairs and thought better of it. He'd wait until she calmed down, then he'd make sure Angel was as far away from the house as possible, and then he would tell his mother. It might not be today, but by the time the sun set tomorrow, his mother would realize that Angel was her future daughter-in-law, not a servant girl or a maid that she could order around to her heart's content. Seeing the way Angel had worked over the last few weeks had truly bothered him, but he'd decided to keep his secret until he was more certain that she would stay. He couldn't see the benefit of upsetting his mother if Angel were to pack up and return to Boston in a few days. But regardless of what Angel might feel or think, Travis knew he was going to do everything in his power to keep her on Mountain Falls. even if he had to beg. He simply couldn't imagine a life without her anymore. Chapter 15, 1st June 1893. Jessica Scott was a woman toughened and trained by the Wild West. She could hardly remember her life before she and Jacob had set out west from the ugly streets of New York. They had worked and saved and saved and worked until they had enough to pay their way with a wagon train. Through blood, sweat, and numerous tears, they had built a life for themselves on Mountain Falls. The first few years had been hard, harder than Jessica could have ever imagined they would be. She didn't count the number of times they didn't have food, or even harbor anger for the second winter when she'd lost a toe due to frostbite. Instead, she only had to look around her at the life they had built to know they had made the right decision to come out west. Just like their ranch had taken shape, so had the town of Waterfall. They had raised cattle, a log cabin, and a garden. By the time Jessica felt the need to have a child, she realized that although they might have been blessed in the West, it didn't seem God had children in mind for her and Jacob. For the first couple of years, it had been hard to accept that she might have a childless life, especially since she knew Jacob would have made a wonderful father. But only once they had accepted their fate had she been surprised with a child in her womb. She'd been 30 years old, too old, the doctor had said, and yet she had given birth to a beautiful and healthy baby boy. Jessica didn't know if all mothers loved their children with a love that consumed them, but she and Jacob did. Perhaps it was because they had Travis later in life. Perhaps it was because they had accepted that they would never have children. But from the day Travis had been born, their lives had revolved around making him the best man he could be. Since she had lost Jacob, that love for Travis had only grown. One day, her son wouldn't have her advice to fall back on, or her experience to count on, and when that day came, he needed the right woman by his side. That was why she knew that this maid from Boston was only going to cause her problems. She had seen the way Travis looked at the girl. She'd seen the way the girl looked back. It didn't matter that Angel was pretty, hardworking, or even pleasant company. It only mattered to Jessica that her son deserved better. He deserved someone with class, with a good upbringing, someone who would be able to weather the tough challenges of the West, not some maid from Boston, desperate to escape whatever situation she had found herself in. After seeing Travis and Angel in the garden yesterday, Jessica had been brooding in her room. She needed to find a way to make Travis see the error of his ways. The problem was, she didn't know how. A knock startled her out of her brooding mood. "Yes," she answered, knowing it would probably be the maid offering to bring her tea. "It's me, Ma. Are you decent?" Travis's voice came from the other side of the door. "Of course I'm decent. It's almost noon," Jessica snapped with irritation. The door opened and Travis walked in with a concerned look. "Are you feeling under the weather? Should I go and fetch the doctor?" "The doctor can't fix what's ailing me," Jessica said simply. Travis nodded before he pulled a chair over to join her at the window. Jessica's heart contracted for a moment as she remembered all the times she and her late husband would sit at the very same window and plan their next project on the homestead. "I need to talk to you, Ma, about Angel," Travis said with a questioning look. "I'm listening." Jessica sighed, her gaze drifting out the window. She knew the look of a love-struck fool when she saw one. "Ma, Angel isn't here as a maid or a servant or the help. She's my fiancée." Prosody. Jessica began to laugh, certain she'd heard her son say he was engaged to the help. But when Travis didn't speak, her heart began to race. She turned to him with a baffled look. "Fiancée? But she's only been here a few weeks. Goodness, Travis, surely you know there are much more suitable women in town than the help." Travis shook his head. "I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't approve." He drew in a sharp breath before he spoke again. "I know you want the same kind of marriage for me that you had with Pa. I knew that I couldn't leave the ranch and head east to find a woman of my choosing. And the women in town, Ma, you know the pickings are slim. I placed an advertisement for a mail-order bride." "You did what?" Jessica cried out without qualm. "I did," Travis continued calmly. "Angel and I have been corresponding with each other since March. We'd been corresponding for almost 3 months before I asked her for her hand in marriage. You proposed to a woman you'd never even met, strike me with a whip, and call me a donkey. Jessica cried out with disappointment. She was shocked, mortified, and very disappointed. Listen, Ma, I'm not done. I invited her to come and stay with us as my fiancée to see if we want to go ahead with the wedding. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd do anything in your power to make her head back east with her tail between her legs. Travis finished, shaking his head. Don't give me that look. I know how protective you are of me. Jessica sighed and relaxed her angry expression. Are you going ahead with the wedding? If it were up to me, I would marry Angel today, Ma, but it's not just up to me. That's why I'm telling you this. I need you to ease back. Stop ordering her around as if she's your maid. She's here to help. She's even starting with a teaching position in town come fall. She's a teacher? Jessica couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. She's not homeless? Travis chuckled and shook his head. No, Ma, she's not homeless. Her parents are quite well off. Her father is a banker. She was raised in a brownstone in Boston, with housemaids and a cook. Jessica's eyes widened with shock. That doesn't mean she's the right woman for you. How do you know she'll weather the winter or be a good wife? I don't. But I know that you didn't know any of those things when you married Pa either. You simply tried your best. Jessica hated that her son was right, but that didn't mean she approved of the waif of the East coming here to steal her son's heart. If Angel stayed and they got married, she wouldn't be anything to him anymore. He'd only care about Angel, and she would be all but forgotten. I need you to try, Ma, to make her feel welcome. Help her learn. I apologize for not telling you sooner, but I was afraid. Now that I've told you, can I count on you to be nice to her? Travis asked with hope in his gaze. Jessica had been a mother long enough to know that if you told your children not to do something, they would do it anyway. So she summoned a smile and told her best white lie. Of course, I'll try my best. Thanks, Ma. Travis stood up and left her alone by the window. Jessica found herself looking out towards the yard where the socialite from Boston stood hanging out her sheets. She would be friendly and nice like Travis had asked, but that didn't mean she couldn't show Angel how hard life could be out here in the West. Chapter 16, 15th July, 1893. The scent of sharpened pencils, paint, and summer filled the classroom as Angel turned in a circle. She could hardly believe her dream was finally coming true. For a moment, she just stood, soaking in the feelings of joy and contentment. When she had first arrived in Waterfall, she had been a little doubtful as to whether or not she could live in such a remote and wild place. But now, after 8 weeks, she found herself struggling to imagine ever going back to Boston. Travis's mother had been very distant with her in the beginning. She'd been downright awful and demanding at times, but even Jessica had started to warm towards her. She had learned so much about living on a homestead and knew that it was all thanks to Jessica. Her first tomatoes were ready to harvest. She had potatoes in the ground, and yesterday she had spent the afternoon picking berries with Travis. They hadn't yet spoken about their future together, but Angel had reached a point where she no longer just thought about Waterfall as an opportunity for her to teach, but as a place where she wanted to build a life. Her feelings for Travis had grown exponentially since she had arrived. All her fears about what type of man he would be were set at ease after just a few days. She only had to see the gentle way with which he treated his calves to know he would be a good father. When she watched how patient he was with his mother, she knew he would one day be a good husband. Then there was the fun and humorous side of him she enjoyed so much. He could make her laugh, even at herself, without feeling foolish. And now she was finally standing in her very own classroom. It was as if Waterfall had brought all her dreams to life. Hopefully, by the time the first snow stuck to the ground, she wouldn't only be a teacher, but Mrs. Scott as well. Good morning, Miss Jones. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. William Thomas smiled at the pretty young girl as he walked toward her. When he'd received an application for the teaching position from the East, he'd known it would be a good match. Although she had no formal education when it came to teaching, She did enjoy the benefit of private tutors growing up. Their small school only had 25 students. William had managed to teach them all by himself for the first 2 years after the school had opened. But as of late, he had realized he needed someone to help with the younger children. Their attention span wasn't as long, and he couldn't explain algebra while teaching tables. "Mr. Thomas, it's a pleasure to meet you too. Thank you so much for offering me this position. I promise I won't let you or the children down." When she turned, William felt his heart stop in his chest. Ever since losing his wife 3 years before, he had never considered remarrying. He hadn't even felt the slightest attraction towards a woman. But now, as he looked at Angel Jones, her youth and beauty beguiled him. "I'm sure you won't." William offered her a charming smile. "Have you settled into town all right?" "Oh yes, Mountain Falls is very lovely." Angel smiled at him in a way that reminded him that he wasn't just a teacher or a widower, he was a man, a very alive one. "Mountain Falls? Are you family of the Scotts?" William asked, curious if he would need to ask Travis Scott permission before he could court her. "Not at the moment, but Travis and I are engaged to be married." It was as if someone had doused him with an ice block the size of a travel crate. William shook his head. "Travis Scott? I didn't know." "It's quite a long story, but for another day. You asked me to come and see you to discuss my lesson plan. I've brought it along for you." Jealousy raged through William's veins as he summoned a smile. The first woman he felt attracted to in 3 years was engaged to the wealthiest man in the area. Life simply wasn't fair. William's smile turned a little cocky as he accepted her lesson plan. Just because life wasn't fair didn't mean he couldn't level the playing field. She wasn't married just yet. Chapter 17. 18th August, 1893. Jessica had kept her word and had been nothing but inviting and kind to Angel since learning about their engagement. But that didn't mean she approved of their relationship. She had bided her time, waiting for the right moment to sabotage their relationship. This morning, she had discovered something that might work. She wouldn't be directly interfering with her son's relationship or his future, but she would make sure that someone did. Jessica pulled the meatloaf out of the oven and felt hopeful about tonight's dinner. "Are we expecting someone for dinner?" Travis asked, stepping into the kitchen. Jessica turned to her son with a bright smile. "The school principal. I thought it would be nice to thank him for offering Angel the position at school." Travis smiled approvingly. "That's nice of you." Jessica didn't add that after going into town to do some shopping and to visit with a few of her friends, she had learned that William Thomas had his eye on Angel. With school open and the fall term in full swing, it meant they would be in each other's company every day. A dinner invitation was her way of putting them together once again, and then hope for a private word to give William her approval to court Angel in his own way. Hopefully, Angel would fall for William Thomas, and then she would have Travis and Mountain Falls all to herself once again. Everything went as planned. William arrived exactly on time. Travis and Angel were both welcoming and friendly, and when they sat down for dinner, the conversation was flowing easily. Jessica's hopes rose even more when William and Angel began to discuss their students. They had more in common than Angel and Travis ever would, which meant it would only be a matter of time before Angel broke off the engagement. "Travis, will you help Angel to fetch the bread pudding from the wood stove?" Jessica asked once everyone's plates were empty. Without argument, Travis and Angel cleared the table before they headed to the kitchen, giving Jessica the moment she needed. "Angel is a sweet girl, isn't she?" she asked William with a sugary, sweet smile. William nodded. "Travis is a lucky man." "He isn't yet," Jessica said with a shrug. "They've yet to announce a date for the wedding, which, if you ask me, is signs of a mold in the haystack." William's brow furrowed. "You think they're having second thoughts?" "I'm just saying that although I think Angel is a lovely girl, I doubt she is the homesteading type. I just fear that in time she'd want to move to town and break Travis's heart." Jessica tried her best to sound like an overly concerned mother, instead of a jealous, vindictive parent wanting to keep her son to herself. "You think Travis would be better suited to someone else?" William asked, leaning closer. His voice was low, as if he realized this wasn't a conversation they wanted to share. I think Angel would be better suited to someone who lives in town, someone handsome who shares her interests, someone like you, Jessica finished with a sigh. But I know you haven't really considered remarrying after losing your wife. Such a shame. William cleared his throat. Actually, I have been giving it some thought, but since I thought that Angel and Travis were committed, which they are not, I might reconsider the thought, William finished with a wolfish smile. That's a clever man, Jessica approved with a smile. Travis and Angel returned to the table, and Jessica and William shared a knowing look. Jessica recognized that wolfish smile on a man's face. It meant he was up for the challenge. There was nothing more a man wanted than something that wasn't his. Yes, it would only be a matter of time before he would turn on the charm, and Angel would realize that homesteading wasn't for her. That a man like William Thomas was more suited to the lifestyle she was accustomed to. Of course, Travis would be heartbroken, but in a few years, Jessica would tell him of her plan, and he'd thank her. He'd thank her for saving him from the disgrace of his wife running off. Then in time, he would meet the right woman. One Jessica would find for him, and then he could marry and start his life. A life and a wife of which Jessica approved. Deep down, she knew that not many would approve of her interference, but then not many women had sons, as handsome or as wealthy as Travis. As a mother, it wasn't only her privilege, but also her duty to protect and secure the best future for her son. Chapter 18. 10th September 1893. Angel laughed as two little girls ran through the leaves, celebrating that fall had arrived. The leaves had started to turn a few weeks ago, but it was only this week that leaves rained from the trees, creating a colorful carpet on the playground of the school. If Angel had ever doubted becoming a teacher, she now realized those doubts were something of the past. There was nothing she enjoyed more than spending her mornings with young, eager minds. They hung on her every word, eager for new information and to learn about the world. Most of the children in Waterfall had never known anything but the West. When she told them about boats bigger than trees or carriages decorated with gold, their eyes simply bugged out of their heads. She could tell they were fascinated when they learned about other countries, other cultures, and stories about the kings and queens of the past. But just as she enjoyed spending her mornings enriching the lives and minds of little ones, she cherished her afternoons on the homestead. She would work in the garden or cook a sturdy meal for Travis and his mother, or sometimes she would just laze around with a book after running all morning behind energetic children. She sometimes wondered where they got all their energy. She felt the hair on the back of her neck rise as she sat on the steps leading up to the school building. There were only 2 classrooms that used to be one large classroom. A curtain divided the 2 classes, but although it was a thin barrier, Angel was grateful for the brief interlude it gave her from William Thomas. Because she had never been a teacher before, Angel wasn't sure what the relationship between principal and teachers was supposed to be. But she couldn't help but feel that William was inappropriate at times. More than once, he'd asked her to stay after school to go over her lesson plans, and every time he'd hardly looked at her lesson plans at all. Instead, he'd ask her to sit with him and share his lunch, or take a walk to the creek to clear their minds after a long day. Angel appreciated that William liked and approved of her work as a teacher, but she didn't appreciate the extra unfounded attention he was sending her way. It made her feel uncomfortable. It was as if her entire body had become tuned into his presence. She merely had to hear the tread of his footsteps or his voice, and her whole body tensed in anticipation of what he would do next. He'd once touched her shoulder, and on another occasion had reached for her hand. Angel couldn't help but feel that he was trying to pursue her, regardless of her engagement to Travis. She had written to Mabel about it and had asked for advice, but she was yet to receive a letter in return. She knew that she couldn't address the matter with Travis or his mother, because it wouldn't only upset them, but it might give Travis doubts about her loyalty. So Angel did everything within her power to avoid being alone with the principal of the school. "Are you as exhausted as I am?" William asked, taking a seat beside her on the steps. Angel smiled, albeit stiffly. "It's not even noon yet," William nodded. "I know, but that's how much algebra exhausts me." She chuckled softly to humor him. "It's English next, right? I'm sure that will energize you a little. There's nothing like a good English novel to intrigue and excite a mind." "There are other things that intrigue and excite me." William's voice had dropped, his gaze pinned on hers. Angel shifted a little more to her left, but she was right up against the railing. She quickly turned her gaze towards the children, trying her best to change the subject. "They love to play in the leaves. I'll be terrified of a snake hiding beneath it." Scent. "They still have about 15 minutes of playtime left. Why don't you join me inside for a cup of tea?" William asked, standing up. The look in his eyes implied that he had a lot more than tea in mind. Although Angel wouldn't mind a cup of tea, she wasn't going to dare go into the schoolhouse without her students. "I'm fine. Thank you. I think I'll sit out here and soak up the sun a little longer." William chuckled. "You can't hide from this forever. We both know what I'm talking about." William turned and headed inside. Angel let out the breath she hadn't been aware she had been holding. It was the first time William had directly implied that he liked her. The first time he'd been bold enough to think that she liked him in that way. Suddenly, she felt trapped, like a caged animal with no way of escape. If she quit her position at school, it would jeopardize any future position she might apply for as a teacher. Travis would want to know why, since he knew how important her teaching job was to her. But if she remained employed by William, she couldn't help but feel as if she would be staying on a runaway train. Sooner or later it would crash, and Angel wasn't sure she or her relationship with Travis would be able to sustain the impact. A heavy sigh escaped her as she shook her head and looked up to the clouds. The only way for her to find a solution was to pray. Hopefully, God would make William understand that she didn't feel the same about him. If anything had made her feelings for Travis clearer, it was William's unwanted attention. It made her realize that the only man she wanted to smile at her or touch her shoulder or tease her was the man she had become engaged to through a letter. They had yet to set a date for the wedding, but Angel finally knew that when he asked if they would go ahead with the marriage, her answer would most certainly be yes. Chapter 19, 18th October 1893. Now that she's left, I need to talk to you. Travis turned to his mother with concern etching his brow. "About what, Ma?" Jessica heaved out a heavy sigh and shook her head. "It's not that I want to, Travis. I simply feel that you should know what is being said in town." Travis frowned at his mother with confusion. Ever since he had told her about his intention to marry Angel, she had been nothing but kind and courteous. But now he couldn't help the uneasy feeling crawling up his spine. He would bet his whole herd of cattle this was about Angel. The snow had not yet started to fall, so Angel still walked to school every morning. Travis enjoyed seeing her excitement in the mornings and listening to her talk about her students at night. It was evident that Angel enjoyed being a teacher just as much as he enjoyed being a rancher. The only difference was Angel enjoyed tending their homesteads after school as well. They had yet to talk about their feelings for each other, but Travis knew the time was drawing closer for him to propose. This time in person. This time when she said yes, he wanted to set a date. It would be a goal for him to know when he would start his new life with Angel. He also knew that her parents were probably anxious to learn when they would be tying the knot. "I'm listening," Travis said to his mother with dull interest. His mother's eyes lit up now that she had his attention. "Yesterday, when I visited Mavis in town, a few of the women from the weekly prayer group had stopped by for tea and cake," Travis sighed. "That's fascinating, Ma. I really need to get to my cattle." "The cattle can wait, Travis. Your future is at stake," Jessica urged. Travis took a seat, knowing she wouldn't let him leave until she said what she wanted to say. He also knew that she would make a long story of it with numerous twists and turns. "Just get to the point, Ma," Travis insisted. "It's been said that Angel and William are spending quite some time together. especially after school. Apparently, they've been seen walking to the creek, even having a picnic outside the schoolhouse when the children had all gone home. Jessica's voice was high-pitched as she delivered the news. Travis frowned. And? They work together? Of course they're going to be seen together. His mother let out an irritable sigh. Open your eyes, Travis. The girl is betraying you. I told you right from the start that I don't think she suits you. Now she's fooling around right before your very eyes, and you're too blind to even notice. Haven't you seen the way William seeks her out at church on Sundays? It's evident to everyone, but apparently not to you. Travis found himself doubting Angel for a brief second before he pushed the doubt away. Ma, she wouldn't do that. We have an agreement that if she'd rather return to Boston, that's her choice. And if she'd rather marry the headmaster, is that part of your agreement as well? Jessica asked, cocking a brow. The last thing Travis wanted to do was doubt Angel's feelings for him, but the more his mother talked, the more he felt the doubt growing inside him. She hadn't once said anything to prove to him that her feelings for him had grown. Then there was the wedding they hadn't talked about. He could understand a brief conversation at school once the students left, but going to the creek? Having picnics? I'll talk to her, he all but barked before he walked out of the cabin. He couldn't stand to see the triumph on his mother's face. She had warned him about Angel when she'd thought she was a servant, but now? Had his mother been right all along? Percent. Had Angel only used him, and now that she had her position as a teacher, she didn't need him anymore. Travis made his way towards the barn and looked for something to do that would be physically draining. Something that would make him too tired to think. Brandy and the other cattle wranglers were out moving cattle, and although he had planned on joining them, he decided to stay close to the cabin instead. He wanted to be there when Angel arrived home from school. Angel was enjoying the sun on her back as she arrived at Mountain Falls. With her leather book bag hanging on her left, she used her right hand to wave to Travis. She was surprised to find him home this early in the day. Usually, he would be out checking fences or riding cattle. Sweat drenched his plaid shirt, and she watched as he lifted the axe high over his head before he let it fall on a log of wood, making it split in two. In all the time she'd been at Mountain Falls, she'd never seen Travis chop wood before. There was something very attractive about watching him use his strength to provide wood for them for the coming winter. "Hello, you've been busy," Angel said with a smile as she reached him. There was a large wood pile beside him, almost as tall as her. "Hiya, yeah." Travis allowed the axe to drop again, and Angel had to jump out of the way as one of the pieces of split wood bounced in her direction. Travis set down the axe and rushed towards her. "Are you hurt?" Angel laughed. "No, I'm fine. Goodness, I didn't know wood can jump that far. You'd think it was made of a coil." Travis smiled at her, but it wasn't his usual smile. This one was almost forced. "Is everything all right, Travis?" Angel heard herself asking. She'd become so in tune with his moods, his expressions, and his smiles that she could instantly tell if something was off. Travis shrugged as he returned to the axe and the wood. He set a chunk of wood on the chopping block before he turned to her. "I don't know. You tell me." The axe dropped again, making Angel's heart skip a beat. Something was definitely wrong. She stood for a minute while he chopped two more pieces before her curiosity and her temper got the better of her. "Would you like me to pry it out of you? Or would you just like me to stand here all day watching you sweat?" Travis flashed her a look that held an edge of temper, his steel blue eyes as cold as the wind that came off the mountains. "Fine, let's talk about it. Do you have feelings for William Thomas?" Angel took a step back, completely offended and surprised by the question. "What? Why would you think such a thing?" "Maybe because that's the talk that's making the rounds in town. Word is the two of you go for romantic strolls to the creek, enjoy picnics after school is out, and are often seen in each other's company, with no students in sight." Travis said the words through gritted teeth. For a brief moment, Angel wanted to respond with a temper of her own, but she could see it was pain that was making Travis act this way. Humiliation and heartache, not anger. She set down her book bag and walked toward him. His eyes held hers, questioning what she was doing. Carefully, she took the axe from him and set it down on the ground before she framed his face with both her hands. His skin was clammy from the hard work, the growth of his beard a day or two old, but Angel didn't care. This was the man she had come to love and had come to care for. She wasn't sure when she had stopped fighting her feelings for him, but she did know that she had lost the war. She was head over heels in love with Travis Scott. Now you look at me, Travis, and you listen closely. When I came out to Waterfall, I made it perfectly clear that I needed a husband in order to teach. Regardless of that, you wrote to me. You asked me to come here to meet you and to see if our friendship could turn into something more, and I came, although I promised myself I wouldn't fall in love. But I was wrong. I was so very wrong about what I really wanted. I don't have feelings for William Thomas because my heart, my soul, and my entire being is completely consumed by the love I have for you, Angel finished quietly. She had never had to declare her love to anyone and could only hope that her love for books had helped her choose the right words. Travis's brow furrowed with a curious look. So you don't want to marry William Thomas? Angel laughed, shaking her head. I'd like to marry you, but you haven't asked me again. I'm beginning to wonder if you ever will. For the first time since he'd met Angel, Travis wrapped his arms around her. He knew that she would probably protest because he was filthy, but instead she melted against him. He brushed a kiss over the top of her head before he whispered to her, I'm sorry for doubting you. I was so afraid it was true. All day I've been thinking that I won't be able to go on without you. He stood back and searched her face. We won't complain come winter. He nodded towards the giant wood pile. Angel laughed and smiled up at the man she loved. Does that mean you've fallen in love with me too? I've been in love with you since I asked you to come to Mountain Falls. Deep down I knew that we were made for each other. Will you marry me, Angel? Travis sank to one knee, his hat in his hand and his eyes on Angel. Angel bubbled with laughter. Yes, as soon as possible. Chapter 20. 21st October, 1893. With her wedding date set, it was with great joy that Angel mailed a letter to her family to invite them to the service. She still couldn't believe that she and Travis were officially getting married. In a little more than 2 weeks, she would be Mrs. Travis Scott. As she walked towards school, she couldn't help but be grateful that she had had the courage to write to Travis that very first time. Little had she known that not only would she find joy in her teaching position in Waterfall, but that she would find love as well. She had left home early, eager to mail the letter to her parents. By the time she arrived at the schoolhouse, it was still another 3/4 of an hour before she would ring the bell for school to start. Enjoying the slower pace and the extra time, she opened the records she kept of each child's progress. She made notes on a separate page about the children who needed a little extra attention and who she needed to assign more challenging tasks. Without the children realizing it, she grouped them each week according to their progress. It was a system that worked for her without the children realizing that some of them were falling behind while some of them were excelling. This is a good surprise. Angel had been so lost in her records that she hadn't even heard William arrive. Her skin crawled as he moved in behind her desk and leaned over. Good morning, William, Angel said rather stiffly. I've already fired up the wood stove and put on some tea. Would you like some? She offered, quickly maneuvering out of her chair to put distance between them. William smiled at her with that wolfish smile that made her feel like prey. I'd like more than just tea. Before Angel knew it, William had backed her into a corner. She smiled and laughed nervously. The tea, William, it's getting cold. It's on the wood stove. It'll hold, but this won't. His mouth crushed against hers so unexpectedly that shock and fear froze Angel for a brief second. William's hands were on her hips, and he was closing Angel in so that she could hardly move. Like a feral animal, Angel felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. Fight or flight. The decision was made before she even realized it. She shoved William away with a strength she didn't know she had before she quickly dove out of the way. William spun around, shaking his head. Don't make me catch you. William, stop it. You're behaving like a lunatic. I'm engaged to be married. Angel cried out at him with both anger and fear. William shook his head. The lunacy is you marrying that dumb rancher. He probably can't even spell. Angel wasn't sure how she had moved from where she was standing to where William was standing, but she looked into his eyes and jutted out her chin. That dumb rancher knows more about being a gentleman than you ever will. She didn't see his hand come up. She didn't see it move towards her. She only felt the sting of his slap as if her cheek had been set on fire. Angel shot a hand onto her cheek, the pain ringing in her ears as she looked at William. She tasted fear mingled with her own blood as the inside of her cheek had been torn by her teeth. Angel wanted to fight back, wanted to stand her ground, but she knew she would never be able to achieve anything with a man who lifted his hand to a woman. He would never see reason. Angel began to run as fast as her legs would carry her. She ran past some of her students who were on their way to school, but she didn't even care to stop and wave. She kept running until her lungs burned and her legs ached. Her throat was bone dry, her hair completely tousled by the wind, but she didn't stop, not until she reached Mountain Falls. She raced up the porch just as the door opened and Travis stepped outside. She ran straight into his arms, needing his reassurance and his protection. "Hey, you're back soon," Travis said, holding her. The tears began to fall, even as her shoulders began to move up and down as she sobbed. Travis took a step back and searched her face. "Angel, what happened?" She shook her head. "William," Travis pulled her hand from her cheek and cursed under his breath. "Did William Thomas strike you?" Angel nodded before she rested her head against his shoulders again. She cried, emotionally exhausted from the whole ordeal. "Ma, come out here," Travis called out. Within seconds, Jessica joined them on the porch. "You take care of Angel. I have something I need to do in town." Travis handed Angel to his mother as if she were a doll before he jogged down the stairs. Brandy came riding up, but before she could say a word, Travis told her to dismount. He jumped into the saddle and rode off as if the hounds of hell were on his tail. Angel cried out for him to stop and come back, but Travis was already out of earshot. "What on earth is going on?" Jessica asked, turning to Angel. It was only then she saw the marks on Angel's face. "Who did that to you?" Angel felt another rush of tears, fearing for what Travis might do. "William Thomas." Jessica's eyes widened with horror as she huddled Angel into the cabin. "You poor child, come on. I've got just the right balm to help with the bruising." Angel finally stopped crying, although her concern for Travis's safety was overwhelming as Jessica settled her in her room. She returned a few minutes later with a tiny container. When they built the railway, some chinks came through town. One of the men working on the tracks got hurt and was rushed to the doctor. A chink rubbed some of this one the bruise, and it hardly even swelled. The scent coming from the container was strong enough to make Angel's eyes burn. "What is that?" "I'm not sure what it's called, but the chink called it tiger balm. I managed to buy this off of him before they left town. I only use it in case of emergencies." Jessica smiled warmly at Angel. It was a smile Angel had never seen before. There was no distrust, doubt, or indifference, just warmth and kindness. "It's going to make your eyes tear up, so better keep 'em closed for a while," Jessica warned, as she carefully applied the balm to Angel's face. It was the first time that she realized that Jessica wasn't just a mean and angry old woman. There was a softer, gentler side to her as well. Once she had applied the balm, she went to fetch a warm cloth to drape over Angel's cheek. She held Angel's hand and told her it would heal without leaving a scar. But the scar was the least of Angel's concerns. In a matter of minutes, William had not only hurt her physically, but he'd also made her afraid to ever return to the school in Waterfall. She wept quietly, knowing that Jessica would think it was the balm. Neither woman said a word as the morning rolled over to noon. Together, they waited in silence for Travis to return. Chapter 21. 22nd October, 1893. "How are you feeling?" Travis asked when Angel joined him and Jessica for breakfast. "My head is a little sore and my jaw hurts, but other than that, I'm fine," Angel said, taking a seat. She glanced at Travis's hand and felt guilt wash over her. Neither she nor Jessica had asked what had happened in town when Travis finally returned shortly after noon the day before, but they had both noticed the lacerations on his right fist. They knew what had happened. Neither Jessica nor Angel had said a word about it. "Here, have some tea." Jessica set down the cup in front of Angel and let out a small chuckle. "I think it's the first time I've made you tea in 5 months." Angel smiled up at Jessica, surprised at the change in her demeanor and the manner in which she treated her since yesterday. "Thank you, I appreciate it. I don't mind making tea." "Still, you shouldn't have to do so much," Jessica insisted. She joined Travis and Angel at the table and took a sip of her own tea before she looked up. "I have to apologize to both of you." Angel felt Travis's hand wrap warmly over hers. Ever since they had set the wedding date, he often took her hand as if to reassure himself that she was there. "About what? You didn't hurt Angel? William did?" Travis insisted. Jessica let out a heavy sigh. "I believe it might have been my fault." Angel listened as Jessica explained her plan for William to fall in love with Angel and coax her out of Travis's arms. When she was done, Angel squeezed Travis's hand in a bid to calm him down. "Thank you for telling us. I appreciate you being honest," Angel said quietly. "Honestly won't make right what I did," Jessica insisted. "It was wrong of me to interfere. I just wanted what was best for my son. I didn't want to believe that he could have found the right woman through a newspaper, of all things. I was certain you were going to hurt him," Jessica admitted. "So you decided to encourage William's unwanted attentions? Ma, that's detestable," Travis said as if he had eaten something sour. "I know. I'm so sorry. I know you won't ever be able to forgive me after what happened. I never thought he'd hurt her or become violent. I just thought, I didn't think. That's the problem." Jessica said firmly, "If you'd rather I leave than ruin your lives more than I already have, I'll pack today." Travis opened his mouth to speak, but Angel shook her head. "Of course, you didn't ruin our lives. If anything, you made us realize how much we love each other. If it hadn't been for the rumors about William and me, Travis and I would have never admitted how much we cared for each other. And as for yesterday, no one could have known that William was capable of something like that. Isn't that right, Travis?" Angel asked her fiancé with a cocked brow. Travis nodded. "She's right, Ma. You're not going anywhere." Jessica let out a sigh of relief before a smile curved her mouth. "I've never been wrong about anything, Angel. It's nice to know I was wrong about you. You're exactly the type of woman my son deserves." "Thank you. It means a lot for me to hear you say that. Besides, you're going to be around long enough to make sure I keep being deserving of him." "And to make sure he treats you right," Jessica said with a warm smile. A knock at the door interrupted their moment of truce. Travis stood up and opened the door to find the sheriff and the mayor standing on the porch. "Might we have a word?" the mayor asked. Travis invited them in and showed them to the kitchen, where Angel and his mother were already seated. Angel felt her heart begin to race. Shept%. She couldn't help but fear that what had caused the bruising on Travis's hand was the reason for the sheriff and the mayor being in their kitchen. "I apologize for intruding on your breakfast, but there are a few things we need to discuss with both you and Travis urgently," the mayor explained. "Travis informed us yesterday of what William Thomas had done to you after he had dragged him before the sheriff. The sheriff and I both accept that he must have bumped his head a few times on the way there." Angel had to hide the smile that threatened to curve her mouth. Everyone at the table was aware that William didn't bump his head against anything but Travis's fist. "Firstly, we want to find out if you need to see the doctor. It's in the town's best interest for you to recover as soon as possible from William's assault." The mayor addressed Angel directly. "I'll be fine in a couple of days," Angel assured them. "Right, then on to the arrangements. Unfortunately, there were no witnesses to testify that William struck you. Of course, we take your word and believe you, but without a witness, it's going to be hard to take him to trial. We've given him 24 hours notice to leave town and notification that he's to be arrested if he ever sets foot in Waterfall again." "But the school," Angel began to protest, shaking her head. "That's the other matter we're here about. In the few months you've been helping at the school, It's clear how much improvement there has been in the children's education. We would like you to take over the whole school as headmistress, with wages to match, of course. We will also assist you in finding a teacher's assistant as soon as possible if you'll accept the position." Angel's jaw dropped, making her flinch with pain. She glanced at Travis, who was smiling at her a mile wide. "Say yes, Angel." "No," Angel said with a smile over her own. "Not just yet. Is there a possibility that the school can reopen after Christmas break? My wedding is only a couple of weeks away, and I'd like to spend the holiday season on the homestead with my husband. It will be my first winter in Indiana." The mayor laughed, and the sheriff chuckled. "I see no problem with that. Sending children to school in the cold has always bothered me anyway," the mayor replied. "Wonderful," Angel said, clapping her hands. Chapter 22. 10th November 1894. Happy anniversary. Congratulations on the baby, and oh my, just look how happy you look. Angel laughed at her mother's rambling as she enveloped her in a hug. "Hello, Mother. It's good to see you too. I've missed you so much, but your father said I shouldn't complain. Travis is a hard-working man, and he can't just leave the ranch whenever I feel like giving my daughter a hug." Angel nodded. "Thank you. Father, I'm glad you understand. I'm so happy you came. Are you staying until after Christmas?" "Until the new year," John Jones announced as the conductor carried luggage and steam trunks out onto the platform. "Did Faith and Grace come?" Angel asked, glancing over her parents as she searched for her sisters. "Yes, they're just slow at disembarking. One would swear they were older than us by the way they've complained throughout the journey," Elizabeth said, shaking her head. "Now, where is my grandson? I can't wait to meet him." Angel smiled at her mother and reached for one of the bags. "It's cold out, Mother. I didn't want him catching a cold. He's at home with Jessica, waiting for you by the fireplace." "A fireplace? Goodness, that sounds heavenly," her father said with a grateful sigh. "You should try and visit come spring. Then the fields are covered with wildflowers. It's nice and warm, and there are calves everywhere." "It's much better than coming in the winter," Angel said as they began to move towards the wagon. After more than a year of living in Waterfall, she was finally confident enough to travel with the wagon when there was snow on the ground. "But then we wouldn't see you for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. One should spend holidays with family," her mother insisted. "I still find it strange to see you without your nose in a book," Grace teased as she rushed towards Angel. Angel laughed and shook her head before she hugged her sister. "I've learned that some adventures are better when you experience them for yourself, rather than just reading about them. And what the adventure you've had. First a husband you met through the mail, then becoming headmistress of the school, and now being a mother. For someone who had a slow start, you sure picked up speed," Faith teased as she joined the group. "It's wonderful to see you, Faith," Angel said, hugging her other sister. Once all the luggage and the passengers were gathered in the wagon, Angel took the reins and set off for home. She had been looking forward to her family's visit ever since baby Jacob's birth a month ago. Neither she nor Travis had expected to be blessed with a child so soon. It had come as a great surprise, one that delighted Jessica more than they could have imagined. For all the grief and trouble she had caused Angel on her arrival in Mountain Falls, Jessica had become a pillar of strength, support, and kindness. She had taken over some of the chores around the house since their wedding, and during Angel's pregnancy had almost taken over every single chore. Once little Jacob was born and named after Travis's father, she fawned over him as any loving grandmother should. Angel still couldn't believe that there was a time when Jessica had wanted her out of the way. But in a way, she understood it, now that she had become a mother herself. She couldn't imagine her son one day moving her aside to spend all of his time and attention on another woman. But Angel would learn from Jessica's mistakes. They hadn't heard from William Thomas again, and no one was more grateful for that than Angel. Not only because she didn't want to see the swine again, but because she was afraid he would bump his head against Travis's fists again. A small smile curved her mouth as she turned onto Mountain Falls. "It's like a picture," Faith said dreamily. It's better than a picture. It's like a fairy tale with smoke bubbling out of the chimney, and you get to live here." Grace shook her head with admiration. Angel didn't respond because secretly the best part about living on Mountain Falls wasn't the scenery or the beautiful cabin, it was Travis. She had never known that love could be so consuming, so rewarding, or so generous. She had never realized that one's whole world could revolve around someone else's happiness. Travis had not only been patient with her to fall in love with him, he had been an utter gentleman until the day they had declared their feelings for each other, something they now did every single day. The door opened and Travis stepped out onto the porch, a bundle of joy in his arms and a smile on his face. Angel's heart swelled with love, knowing that Jacob was blessed to have the best father any child could have asked for. "He's not raising it like one of his calves, is he?" her mother asked in a teasing tone of voice. Travis came down the porch steps and laughed. "Why not? As long as you keep them warm, fed, and loved, they're both happy." Laughter filled the air as Angel's family reconnected with her new family. She glanced up at the cloudless winter sky and thanked the Lord for more blessings than she could ever have hoped for.